I now call the October 4th, 2016 regular council meeting to order. Would council members please denote their presence by pressing your yes switch? The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, excuse the absence of Councilman Miller.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Humphrey. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Council meetings are also televised and can be viewed on cable channel 192. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the September 20th regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on September 26th, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson or Pacheco. Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Hopkins. Any corrections? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the October 4th bills and claims as audited by City Manager McDonald.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Cathy, seconded by Councilman Powell. Any abstentions? Please cast your vote.
You need to declare first?
And please cast your vote.
Maybe.
And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
And now it is my pleasure to acknowledge an organization that has helped preserve Wyoming's heritage, the Casper Historic Preservation Commission. This group of dedicated volunteers recently tackled a large multi-year project, the survey and inventory of the downtown Casper and the old Yellowstone district. They then proceeded to develop a nomination for the National Register of Historic Places for the Downtown Historic District. The Casper Historic Preservation Commission began work of identifying buildings to be surveyed and to develop the map for the consultant to use in 2013. With the assistance of contractor Kerry Davis of Preservation Solutions, LLC, more than 200 buildings were surveyed with Wyoming Historic Architecture form submitted. While Ms. Davis was conducting the physical survey, commission members provided all the necessary data for the consultant, including scanning and preparing files on individual buildings and the collating of files of commission member reports gleaned from the assessor's office. Public meetings were held to local policymakers and building owners to help them understand the process of the survey and the ultimate goal of developing a National Register nomination. In the end, more than 1,000 digital photos were organized and labeled. Data work included creating a database of all buildings, building their histories, descriptions, etc., and all the sites given Smithsonian numbers. The work of the nomination of the Downtown Historic District is progressing. Review has been completed by the State Historic Preservation Office, and the nomination has been approved by the state's National Register Review Board, a panel of 13 experts in historic preservation. It has now been submitted to the Keeper of the National Register within the National Park Service. Downtown Casper should be listed without any unforeseen issues, of course, before the end of this year. At the Preservation Wyoming Conference last week in Rock Springs, the Casper Historic Preservation Commission was presented with the Preservation Award. Would the members of the Casper Historic Preservation Commission please come forward and join me at the back of the dais so that we may applaud your dedication and achievement. Thank you. Congratulations to the Historic Preservation Commission for this successful multi-year undertaking. Congratulations to Catherine.
Excuse me.
Are you going to give me this? Very nice.
Say Casper.
Casper.
And again.
Casper.
Casper.
Thank you. Well, let's put this here.
You can't take that home, Daniel.
Well, I love these glass bricks. We'll just put it there, Phil. Okay. Thank you, and Peggy Brooker, would you please come up? You guys can. Okay. All right. Peggy has served on the Casper Historic Preservation Commission since 1990. That's 26 years for those of you who are good at math. Her commitment has been instrumental in the accomplishments of the organization during all of those years. Peggy's expertise, knowledge, and fortitude have saved historic resources for generations to come. It's part of a legacy. Little does the public know what has gone into these projects, and Peggy's guidance and care has always been steadfast. She is a committed and passionate professional, and her work has ensured that Casper's treasures will be saved for future generations. The Casper City Council would like to present Peggy with a certificate of recognition for her 26 years of service. Congratulations, Peggy. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Mayor, here
Yes.
is a short letter from Senator Barrasso that goes with the award.
Well, it's from our United States Senator, so that means I have to read it. It's addressed to Connie Thompson, of the chair of the Casper Historic Preservation Commission. Dear Connie, congratulations on your recognition by the Wyoming State Historic Preservation Office and the State of Wyoming National Register Review Board. Bobby and I enjoyed being with you as you received this well-deserved honor. It is a wonderful thing to see that you have been honored for your substantial contributions to historic preservation. Wyoming has a rich history, and your ongoing efforts to maintain, restore, and protect our state's culture and history is truly commendable. As we look forward to Wyoming's future, we will continue to lean on you to preserve our past. Again, congratulations. Thank you for all you do for our great state. With warm regards, John Barrasso, U.S. Senator. Very nice. Okay. This goes with the cool brick. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
For all your work.
Good work.
wait.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Nice work, Peggy.
Thank you.
United States Senate letterhead. Just saying. Okay. Council will now address the main business portion of the meeting. Council carries out business by three types of action: by ordinance, resolution, and minute action. Ordinances require 3 readings and votes, whereas the other items are passed by 1. Ordinances create or modify law, whereas resolutions and minute actions provide for council to carry out its business. These various actions have different publication and public hearing requirements. Items may be considered by consent or not consent. Items not listed as consent will be discussed by council. There is a process for the public as well as council members to remove a title from consent for that discussion. Council will now consider establishing the schedule of future public hearings, which are held for the purpose of obtaining public input. Public hearings are held for items such as annexations, liquor license transactions, passing of the budget, and zone changes. Public hearings are also require a public notice via the newspaper. Please read the consent agenda titles.
Establish October 18, 2016 as the public hearing date for consideration of a zone change of lots 1 through 3, Block 3, Lot 1, Block 4, and Lot 1, Block 2, Harmony Hills Addition Number 2, Phase 2, located at 1725, 1625, 1575, 1525, and 4911 Yesness Court, from C2 General Business to R2 1-Unit Residential. Establish November 1st, 2016 as the public hearing date for consideration of the following 3 items. Transfer of ownership for microbrewery license number 1 for Wyoming State Brewing Company, LLC, doing business as Wyoming State Brewing Company, located at 256 South Center Street. Issuance of a new restaurant liquor license number 31 to Himalayan Indian Cuisine, LLC, doing business as Himalayan Indian Cuisine, located at 232 East 2nd Street, Suite 100B. Issuance of new restaurant liquor license number 9 to Shogun Restaurant Management, Inc., doing business as Shogun Restaurant, located at 3095 Talon Drive, Suite 400.
The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing dates just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Hiley, seconded.
Second.
Was that Kathy?
Did you get it?
Well, we'll just put Hopkins on there. Seconded by Councilman Hopkins.
Nice, finally.
Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Council will now hold previously scheduled public hearings for the purpose of obtaining public input. Public hearings are held for items such as annexations and liquor license transactions, passage of the budget, and zone changes. The city attorney will present applicable exhibits for the issue, and the city manager will give council a report. Members of the audience will then be asked to speak either in favor or against the issue, and then council will discuss the issue and act upon it if necessary. I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the sale of city-owned property generally located at Ash and Walnut Streets and south of Midwest Avenue in the Old Yellowstone District. City Attorney Bill Lubin, do you have any exhibits?
I do, Your Honor. I have 2 exhibits. Exhibit number 1 being correspondence from Liz Becker to V.H. McDonald. That document dated September 30th, 2016. And exhibit number 2, that being the affidavit of publication as published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated September 28th, 2016.
City Manager McDonald, your report, please.
Your Honor, in the fall of 2015, the state, as part of its effort to build a new office building, became interested in acquiring approximately 6 acres of land owned by the city. The land is located between Ash and Walnut Streets on the south of Midwest Avenue in the Old Yellowstone District. At that time, the purchase price discussed for the property was $770,000. The property cost approximately $250,000 and is the remainder of a large parcel of property the city purchased from the Union Pacific Railroad. In May of 2016, the property was appraised at $2 million. Wyoming Statute 15-1-112 allows the city to sell land of the state for any purpose after a public hearing. The notice of this public hearing and proposed sale was published for 3 consecutive weeks as the statute requires. This sale is dependent on the state's investigation and determination that the property is suitable for the state's intended purpose. The state has until November 3rd, 2016 to cancel the agreement to purchase by written notice if the state determines the property is unacceptable. To complete this transaction, a resolution has been prepared for council's consideration. The resolution will authorize the execution of a real estate purchase agreement, a warranty deed, and an assignment of leases.
Thank you. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the sale of city-owned property to please approach the lectern. Those to speak in favor. Are we sure no one wants to speak in favor? Hello, Pat. Welcome. Oh, welcome, Mr. Sweeney.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Pat Sweeney, 951 North Kimball. I don't know if I'm in favor or against, but basically, do we know the intended use by the state? Is it strictly parking for the new office complex? Is that the concept?
At the State Building Commission, I saw some conceptual drawings, and they may have to go back to the drawing board. Their legislative representative was not really satisfied with those drawings, pointed out some issues, so they may go back to the drawing board, but the drawings that I saw had buildings and parking in this space.
Okay. Then there's been numerous rumors out there about the city's ability to utilize any parking areas for, say, the Yellowstone District parking, whether it be RACA or any future development. Is that still off the table as far as cross-parking arrangements?
Well, the Building Commission, we tried to make parking, shared parking, public parking, a condition of sale. Building Commission said absolutely not. But they did not close the subject. They said we will entertain that idea, but you are not going to attach that as a condition of sale.
Okay.
So it's still under discussion, and at least this council understands that public parking is an important issue, and we are not going to dismiss it.
Okay. So it currently is off the table as far as a condition of sale?
They want to just buy this footprint and think about their parking arrangements later.
Okay. And this doesn't include, because the Goodstein properties to the east of the blue area between David and Ash, that previous councils had basically relinquished that back a couple of years ago back to Goodstein's. And then they've since sold that site to the state.
Is that how you recall it? Okay,
Well said.
Okay.
yeah, all right.
Okay, so there weren't any possible parking conditions the city could have held anyway on that deal. So, okay. So this is where the possible parking issues might have been. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any others that wish to speak in favor of the sale of city-owned property? Please come forward.
Dennis Steensland, 533 South Washington. I'm not clear, are you looking to sell it for 770 or are you looking to sell it for 2 million?
We're looking to sell it for 770, but we bought it for 250,000.
And it appraises for 2 million.
Yes, but there, the appraisal isn't necessarily an offer, and the land has other issues. And when a government sells to another entity of government, you don't have to have that arm's reach within appraisal value.
Okay, I can buy that. It just doesn't seem like good business sense, even though you're making a profit on it, to sell it for that amount. And I know there's other issues involved with it, but with the economy the way it was, I would hope we would go for the 2 million.
Right, but it's still taxpayer money. It was, it'll be taxpayer money paying us taxpayer money. And so there's a kind of parity there in that, and we tripled our investment in 10 years.
Okay, thank you very
Right.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, never mind.
Oh,
That's okay.
all right. Welcome, Mr. Goodenough.
Keith Goodenough, 333 South Saconee. I had a couple questions. This was former railroad land, and I remember when I was on the council, there was a lot of discussion about how to get title to it, and the city attorney had to put in a lot of effort, I believe, and wasn't it an act of Congress or something similar?
It was a Supreme Court ruling last year, I believe, that cleared those old railroad titles to the land.
Okay. And I guess I'd just point out that all the time and effort the city attorney put into it is part of the value of the property as well.
I understand, and I
And
mentioned that at the pre-meeting.
And then, well, we
Yeah.
couldn't see the pre-meeting.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, I guess my other question has to do with parking, because right now, the Rocca business is poaching parking across the street. If you go by there at night, the parking lot that was owned by the Goodsteins, that I guess is now owned by the state, is all filled with Rocca customers and employees. And I don't believe they have any agreement with the state. So my question is, did the city consider not selling or the entire chunk of property in order to allow the Rocca business to have some parking on that same side of the street? Because at some point, the state could very well run people off of that chunk of property. And so did the city consider not selling the full 6 acres, but keeping a piece of that so that those businesses would have some allowable parking?
Yes, and I will characterize the negotiations with the state concerning parking as prickly in nature. So we have what we have, and we understand the need for parking in this area, and we won't just let that go.
Well, Mr. Mayor, and I don't know, generally speaking, when a business is created downtown, they have to provide a certain number of parking spaces. And I don't know if under the old Yellowstone District zoning, what the details were, but it just seems odd to me that you've got a business there that requires that many parking places, and there's really very few dedicated parking places. And so the state would not go for the deal unless this full piece of property was included, I gather. You couldn't keep half an acre for parking for those businesses. Is that the deal?
Sort of. There are gentlemen's agreements, and there are thresholds that nobody's willing to cross. Like, I really don't foresee anyone getting towed if they're parked in the Goodstein parking lot. I might have just gone on the record and shot myself in the foot at the very same moment.
Well, I hope all the towing companies are watching.
You're welcome. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the sale of city-owned property? Anyone else? Okay, this is where we switch it to those who would like to speak in opposition to the sale of city-owned property. Please approach the lectern.
Keith Rowland, 542 South Durban. I'm against the sale basically for 3 reasons. One, there's no assurance that there's going to be any building on this property anytime in the near future. Given the state budget, this could be empty lot for 5-10 years. We're just switching from one government entity to another government entity, and nothing's being done. And I'm sure the state would not agree to a condition clause. If you don't start construction within the next 2 years, this transaction's null and void, and it just gets reversed. The second reason why I'm against it is because it is substantially against appraised value. And part of the reason, in my guess, is the reason why the appraised value is higher. If you look at the actual map, the blue area, there is 4 streets that you have access areas for the commercial property. Now, the state probably really doesn't care that you have 4 roads that can go into this property. But if you're building a retail outlet here, that's extremely important, especially the one that's on Collins Avenue. You could have entrance there and also on Midwest. And it looks like you could possibly even have one in Ash, and you also have one in Walnut. That adds extreme value to any retail property, that when you can have 4 entrances and exits to a property. The state probably could care less because they're just going to build whatever there in the parking lot and wherever it goes in and out. But to a commercial operation, that Collins Avenue adds probably $1 million to that. The third reason why I'm against it is there's no transparency here. There's no bidding. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Chapter 11 bankruptcy statutes. Many times they try to sell assets within the bankruptcy estate, and they use something called a stalking bid. Now, the offer by the state to pay $770,000 would be equivalent to a stalking bid. Many times these stalking bids are arranged for by an outside buyer, or many times it's the secured creditors who do what they refer to as a credit bid. I'm not going to go into the details of what the credit bid is, but there's a bid in process, and then what they open it up to the public, and anybody can submit a bid. And you usually have a fixed timeline, and you have to have a 10% deposit or whatever. And if there's nothing else coming up, fine. But we don't know if someone could come in here and offer $2.5 million for this property, because it is very valuable, especially that Collins entrance, and that's such a huge area there. If nobody offers anything, fine. Then we know we have transparency, we try the best. It puts you guys off the hook, the state off the hook, and you can be able to say, well, we open it up to the public. If no one bid for it, fine. But I think at this point we need to table it, and hopefully the city attorney can draw up some type of agreement with the state to continue this sale, and then open it up to an auction process for the general public to come in and say, all right, we're offering this. The stalking bid is $770,000. A bid must be above that with a 10% deposit by, let's say, February the 1st or whatever. Because I think we need that. It will take you guys off the hook. And it also might develop something in that Yellowstone area. At the end of the meeting, when the public has the right to speak, I'm going to bring up the point that we need to get rid of the regulations that have been detrimental to the Yellowstone district. We have not built up anything in that district for the 10-year plan because of the extreme restrictions, and I'm going to mention some of those later at the end of the public meeting. But I think that we need to table this at this point and open it up to a bidding process. That way it takes off. The public is like, holy, why are we, like this gentleman here, why are we selling for less than $2 million? Well, because we didn't get any bids for it, that's why. And we'll take everything off the table and get some transparency here. Thanks.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
just as a matter of record, I think we need to point out that the state has been seeking to consolidate the office buildings that they're renting in a number of places in town. And that was the reason that the state wanted to look at this. And I think, as a group, I think the council agrees with that concept, and we think they'd be a good neighbor for Old Yellowstone District, which has had a lot of development. Maybe you haven't been down there lately, but it's had a lot of development go on down there.
Actually, I was down there about 15 minutes ago before the meeting. When you were developing this, when we were talking about the development about 9 years ago, when we had all these different public meetings, and we were mentioning the fact what could go in there, and they were mentioning possibly the high school and everything else moving across the street. And at that time, many of the people that own property in there were against anything other than commercial going in there. They didn't want any government entities in there because it's not a magnet that would draw in other real estate. They wanted commercial in there because commercial draws another commercial. So if you own property down there, you don't want a state office building maybe across the street. You would rather have something like a Kohl's department store in this area. Because actually, I wanted to put Kohl's in here 9 years ago. They actually were looking at it. I'm talking about that later. But I mean, you want something like that in there, not a state office building. And at that time, we were talking about the fact we didn't want government entities in there, and that's why a lot of people are a little bit against the library going over there, because they figure that's not a commercial enterprise. We're just basically shifting the library from over here over to the other spot. We're really shuffling a deck of cards and not bringing any new business down there. People are against it. They want a commercial only, or multi-use items. And that was part of the building plan before with the Yellowstone District, was not to really put a government office building in there. That was even talked about at some of the public meetings we had.
I respect your opinion, I just differ with you.
I mean, I'm just saying, I don't disagree with putting it in there, but I'm just saying some of the commercial people that had owned property down there wanted other commercial down there. I didn't say I did that, but I'm just saying others did. That was my agreement, but I'm just saying other people mentioned that.
Any more questions or comments for Mr. Rowland? Okay. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition of the sale of city-owned property? Please approach the lectern. Anyone else to speak in opposition? Got the gavel. Okay. There being no one else to speak either for or against the sale of city-owned property, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to, by resolution, authorize the sale of city-owned property.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Powell, seconded by Councilman Hopkins. Discussion.
I'll start. Thank you, Your Honor. I think the most important part, and I've said this from this chair on several occasions already, that we need to pay attention to is that there is a funding mechanism and a plan for the state office building to be built on Collins Drive. It's not just a concept or an idea. It's a plan with phased funding. It will happen. And the amount of money that it will inject into our economy is considerable. The estimated cost of that building is $45 million. That's $45 million of stimulus to our local economy. It's $45 million of business for our construction companies and for the people that they employ. And to make a major deal out of the fact that we are selling this property for less than we may have received from another bidder, I think is simply losing perspective on what this will do for our economy. Had we done what Mr. Rollins suggested and put this property up for bid, and had it been purchased by someone else, that state office building would not be built. And none of that would happen, because they have to have a place for their employees to park. We do hope, as the mayor indicated, that we will be successful in persuading them that shared use is the best solution for everyone. And I am hopeful that we will make that happen. So this is going to be a great thing for the city of Casper to have all of those employees in a new facility instead of spread all over town, for the citizens, and to have those 400, I believe it's about 400 employees living or working downtown is going to be a major benefit to the downtown area. They're going to go out to lunch, they're going to stay for dinner, they're going to go to events at the David Street Station. It's going to be a major, it's going to have a major and positive impact on our community. So I will be supporting this, and I think we should maintain our focus on the most important matter, which is getting that building built.
Thank you. Any more comments? More discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
There's a lot of talk about the appraised value of the property. I would venture all of those that are interested in that appraisal to go ahead too and look online at the packet for tonight's meeting and look through the sale contract and look at the encumbrances and the irrevocable easements that are a part of this sale. I'm not sure that many business people would be interested in investing a lot of money in putting up a building on a piece of property that the railroad could come in at any time and demand you tear down with no compensation. So I think that's another thing that needs to be weighed heavily in the pros and the cons of the 770 versus the 2 million. And I wish people would look at that and do the due diligence that our city attorney has done and his staff in looking at this and trying to come up with an equitable contract.
Any more? Councilman Hiley.
I, like some of the people who came up here this evening, get great heartburn from the sale price of this property. I recognize the history of the negotiations, and I recognize the good work that the city staff and the city attorney's office has done to carry us to this point. Councilman Cathy, his point is spot on. There are some flaws in the property, and we may be fortunate to have a buyer. Still, just this gives me heartburn, and I understand completely the public perception problem of trying to support the sale of a property that appears to be worth $2 million and the sale price that we're offering. But as a taxpayer and a citizen of the state, I'm happy for the state that they may obtain this property at such a fair price. And that doesn't do us much good in the city side, but it is a government-to-government transaction. Still pretty torn on how I'll vote this evening.
You have a few more minutes, because I would just like to mention, you know, that every time Keith Rowland comes up here, I learn stuff. And a stocking bid is an interesting notion. There was discussion about putting a timeline on that, and they wouldn't go for it. So, you know, when the contract was being drafted, that did come up to try and light a fire under it, but they were a little implacable. And the I think the takeaway, at least for me, eternal optimist, is we're giving the state a good deal, and the state is having financial stresses, so it's okay. It's okay to give them a good deal. Any others? Any more comments? Any more discussion? Okay, there's a question for council. Do we table it to pursue? Okay, all right. Any amendments that we can foresee? All right, are we ready? Please cast your vote. Oh, do I need to? Oh, yeah, let's do the motion. I thought we already did. We got Powell and Hopkins. Yeah.
Yes, it was
Yeah.
made by Councilman Powell and seconded by Councilman.
Okay,
It's to approve the resolution that would approve the sales agreement, the assignment of the leases, and a warranty deed for closing.
okay. So, are we ready? Please cast your vote. If that green was a little more yellow, some of us would feel a little better.
And I'd ask that the vote be recorded.
Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
It was a reticent aye from some, but thank you for recording the vote. I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the transfer of ownership of dive gear to the Natrona County Sheriff's Department. City Attorney Lubin, do you have any exhibits?
I do, excuse me, pardon me. I do, Your Honor. I have two exhibits. Exhibit number 1 being correspondence from Kenneth King to V.H. McDonald dated September 7th, 2016. And exhibit number 2, that being the affidavit of publication as published in the Casper Star Tribune, that document dated September 28th, 2016.
City Manager reports.
Your Honor, Wyoming Statute 15-1112, a popular statute tonight, allows personal property to be transferred to other governments subsequent to a public hearing. The Casper Fire EMS Department has no longer needs an inflatable boat and 6 set of dive gear, and recommends transferring the property to the Natrona County Sheriff's Department that operates a dive team currently. The publication requirements for the public hearing has been met, as mentioned by the city attorney, and a resolution has been prepared for city council's consideration, which will authorize this transfer of property.
Thank you. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the transfer of ownership of dive gear to please approach the lectern. Dive gear and a rubber boat. Anyone want to speak in favor? Okay. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition of the transfer of ownership of dive gear to please approach the lectern. Very well. There being no one to speak either for or against the transfer of ownership of dive gear, I now declare the public hearing closed. Chair would entertain a motion to, by resolution, authorize the transfer of ownership of dive gear to the Sheriff's Department.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Mayor Cathys, seconded by Councilman Humphrey. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hiley.
it appears to this councilman that in the matter of government-to-government transactions, this council is being quite charitable this evening.
Yep. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Any amendments? All right, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With Councilman Johnson abstaining, motion passes.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the zone change for 911 CY Avenue and 1535 South Poplar Street from R2 to C2. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
I do, Your Honor. I have two exhibits for this matter. Exhibit number 1 being correspondence from Liz Becker to V.H. McDonald, dated September 23rd, 2016. And exhibit number 2, that being the affidavit of publication as published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated September 20th, 2016.
City Manager McDonald, your report, please.
Your Honor, Cornerstone Commercial Partners LLC has applied for a zone change of 2 lots located immediately south of the former Shell gas station at the corner of CY Avenue and Poplar Street. The property consists of 2 different zoning classifications, C2, where the station sits, and R2, which is residential, with the structure straddling 2 classifications. The applicant has applied for a zone change from R2, 1-unit residential, to C2, general business. Zoning surrounding the subject property is Old Yellowstone District and South Poplar Corridor Form-Based Code to the north, C2, general business to the west, R2, 1-unit residential to the south, and R2, 1-unit residential / C2, general business to the east. Land uses in the surrounding area are a mix of residential and commercial. Land use plan shows the desired future land use classification of the area east of Poplar and south of CY Avenue to be single-family moderate density. The area surrounding the subject property along CY Avenue is designated as general commercial. Rezoning the lots would bring the property into conformance and allow for the property to go back to a productive commercial use. It would not preclude single-family residential use, which is a listed permitted use in the C2 zones. Any commercial development of the vacant property immediately south of the gas station structure would require adequate buffering from the adjacent residential property. A rezoning of the property to C2 is the recommended solution for the conformity issue. Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the zone change after a public hearing on August 18, 2016, and there were no public comments received.
Thank you. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issues involving the zone change located at 911 CY Avenue and 1535 South Poplar Street to please approach the lectern. Those speaking in favor. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Baker. I'm with Broker One Commercial Real Estate, 550 North Poplar, Casper, 82601. I represent the potential buyers of this property. It is a long-term professional Casper business that is looking at relocating their business to this location. They will operate in normal business hours. They will not have what I consider to be any impact or minimal impact on traffic in and out of there. The plan is to remove the canopy that was on the existing service station and do a whole new remodel of the existing facility and provide that. I think it's something that can really make that area a nice fixed up area from what it is currently on the deal. Again, normal business operational hours, so nothing late at night. They're not planning on big, huge bright lights or anything else that would affect any residentials around that. There's no intention at this time to build anything on that existing strip of land that currently is zoned R2.
Questions for Mr. Baker? I have one. Is it the same property owner that is interested in the service station?
Yes, they'll buy both 911, the service station.
So this will be contiguous?
Yes.
Very good. Any other questions? Thank you. Anyone else to speak in favor of the zone change? Okay, switching gears, anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this zone change to please approach the lectern. Anyone to speak in opposition? All right. There being no others to either speak for or against, the public hearing on the zone change located at 911 CY Avenue and 1535 South Poplar Street is now, the public hearing is closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance approving a zone change for lots 5 and 7 of the Standard Oil Company subdivision in the city of Casper, Wyoming.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Discussion. I have a question, and maybe it's for you, maybe it's for Liz, maybe it's for Craig. Okay, it's for Craig. Craig Collins. How on earth does a property straddle two zoning designations?
That's an excellent question, Your Honor. Good evening, Craig Collins, City Planning Office. My best guess, this building's been there for quite a while, probably predates most of us here at the city. The best guess is in the old days, we used to use a paper map for our zoning, and probably somebody came in and looked at the map and it was unclear exactly where the line was drawn. Now with GIS, we're able to be a little more accurate in the zoning classifications and where the lines are actually drawn. So that would be my best guess, but no guarantees.
Thank you. Any more questions for Craig? Thank you, sir. Okay, discussion. Anyone want to weigh in? Okay. I would just like to note that GIS put a lot of surveyors out of business. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the transfer of ownership of retail liquor license number 35 from the City of Casper, doing business as the Casper Events Center, to Global Spectrum LP, doing business as the Casper Events Center. City Attorney, please present your exhibits.
Your Honor, I have 4 exhibits for this particular item. Exhibit number 1, that being correspondence from Tracy L. Belser to V.H. McDonald, dated September 27th, 2016. Exhibit number 2, that being the affidavit of publication as published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated September 28th, 2016. Exhibit number 3, that being the affidavit of website publication as published on the City of Casper website, that document dated September 20th, 2016. And exhibit number 4, that actually being the liquor license application, which was filed with the city on September 12th, 2016.
Thank you. City Manager report.
Your Honor, as part of contracting with Global Spectrum, the parent company of Spectra Venue Management, to manage the Casper Events Center, it is necessary to transfer the city's retail liquor license used at the Event Center to Global in order for Global to continue to sell alcohol at events. In that the license is a valuable publicly owned asset, the management contract requires that Global, as the holder of the license, will allow the license to be transferred back to the city in the event Global ceases management of the Event Center. Additionally, all applicants for the transfer liquor license are dependent on the city receiving a written consent from the existing holder of the license. And again, to provide security that the city will be able to obtain the license back, the contract specifies that Global or Spectra gives the city a letter currently consenting to the eventual transfer if need to be. And we've got that letter in our hands, and we will keep that letter for the duration of the contract and have that ready for the eventual transfer back when and if it happens. All publication and advertising on the city's website required to give notice for the holding of the public hearing has been completed, and we recommend the transfer of this license.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the transfer of liquor license number 35 to please approach the lectern. Those speaking in favor. Transfer of liquor license number 35. All right, at this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the transfer of retail liquor license number 35 to please approach the lectern. Speaking in opposition. Welcome, Mr. Steensland.
Dennis Steensland, 533 South Washington. I'm not against it at all. I'm just curious as whether the city gets a percentage of the liquor sales during the term that Spectra has the license. Do we get a percentage, or is that part of the contract that's just a transfer?
I remember that the contract divvies up profits, and that does include liquor sales?
Your Honor, the city essentially retains 97% of all the sales, all the concession sales, and Spectra, I believe, gets 3% of concession sales.
So we get the lion's share of concession sales.
I see. And that includes liquor?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. 97%, that's a ferocious lion's share right there.
We got good negotiators.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else to speak in favor, or we're at opposition now? Okay. Anyone else to speak in opposition? No one else? Okay. There being no others to speak either for or against the transfer of liquor license number 35, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize the transfer of ownership of retail liquor license number 35.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hiley, seconded by Vice Mayor Kathy. Discussion. Amendments. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Consideration of the next items will be by ordinance. Please read the consent ordinances on third reading by title only.
An ordinance approving a replat, subdivision agreement, and zone change for the proposed Wolf Creek 8 addition in the city of Casper, Wyoming. An ordinance approving a replat, subdivision agreement, and zone change for the proposed Central Wyoming Rescue Mission addition in the city of Casper, Wyoming.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the consent ordinances just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Hiley. Pacheco. You're going to have to do something with your voice. Yeah, I just know it's from over there. Okay. Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Pacheco. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Council will now consider consent resolutions. Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 9A1, a resolution authorizing release of local assessment district liens. Item 9A2, a resolution authorizing a participation agreement with Vantage Trust Company, LLC, for the investment of assets within the City of Casper Retirement Health Savings Plan. Item 9A3, a resolution renaming West E Street located in the Liberty Addition and authorizing and directing the resolution to be recorded in the office of the Natrona County Clerk. Item 9A4, a resolution authorizing the lease of Mike Cedar ball field to Casper Crush, Inc. Item 9A5, a resolution authorizing an agreement with 71 Construction, Inc. for the North Platte Sanitary Sewer Interceptor Corrosion Control Building Project. Item 9A6, a resolution authorizing change order number 1 to the agreement with Grizzly Excavation and Construction, LLC for a time extension for the Casper Family YMCA bid package number 2. Item 9A7, a resolution authorizing an agreement with Precision Demolition for the 2016 River Restoration Tree Hauling Project.
The council will now consider consent resolutions. Okay, the chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Powell. Any abstentions or nay votes?
Your Honor,
Yes.
I'd like to record a nay vote on item 9A3.
Any others? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With Councilman Johnson voting nay on item 9A3, motion passes.
Now it's the time we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to please come forward. We ask that you please state your name and address and stand and be heard.
Keith Rowland, 542 South Durban. As I stated earlier, I think that we need to do a relook at the Yellowstone District. About 10 years ago, we had many public forums, discussions. In fact, there was a meeting here that every single seat was full. There was only standing room and people were giving presentations on their opinion of the Yellowstone District. Almost everybody spoke in favor of the development, but no one really spoke about the specifics of the plan. I was the only one that was adamantly against it then. I'm still adamantly against it now. Councilman Dobbin at the time was slightly against it because he used the example is if someone wanted to build a German Bavarian restaurant over there and the Bavarian style, they would not be allowed to. And he kept using that as an example why he had reservations about it. Everybody else thought this was, absolutely can be great. But the trouble is, we have not met any of our goals. Do you realize how much we're supposed to have done within 10 years? Now, granted, some things have been built over there. A few things have been improved. The cosmetic, buildings on the outside look much nicer. We have benches and we have sidewalks that are improved. But under the 10-year plan, we were supposed to have 580, it was a low, to 751 units of residential buildings, residential units. Where are they? None, almost none. We have not met that goal. We're also supposed to have, 272,000 to 387,000 square feet of non-residential commercial structure built in there within 10 years. Unless they start building quick in the next year, that is also failed. Now, it's not because the economy was terrible here during that time period. We had a boom on the east side of town along East 2nd Street. All of that was built up. We have many, many structures over there. Around 9 years ago, when we were developing the plan, I was in contact with Kohl's department store. I have sort of affinity with Kohl's department store because of the fact that their first store was built in our suburb. And at that time, actually, it was a grocery store that had terrible produce, and they ended up doing a department store instead next to them, and it's been history ever since. And when I was in contact with them, I talked to April 1st to make sure that I was not stepping on anybody's toes about building something else in there. And my communication with them, they said they have an interest because they had just built one in Cheyenne, they had an interest in building one here. And I mentioned about the Yellowstone District, and they had an enormous interest, especially since it had access to the expressway over there. When they heard about all the restrictions that were going to be put in that area, they said, well, we can build our building that way, but we don't want to build there because we want other commercial structures built around us that may not be able to meet that. So what did they end up doing? They built way on the east side of town. That whole strip that was over there could have been moved into the Yellowstone District, but almost none of that would have met their standards. Remember, we had a form-based building code over there, form-based. And it was 84 pages long. And some of the insane things that they had is you could only have 3 colors in the front. So if someone had a corporate structure that they normally build with multiple colors, like 4 or 5 colors, they couldn't build over there like that. They would have to do a redesign. Also, you couldn't build a motel, it had to be a hotel. Really, I mean, the public was demanding no motels over there? That's insanity. You couldn't build by using tilt wall construction. Well, the people that were saying this, clearly they have no understanding of how retail buildings are built. Most of them are built with tilt wall. They said, no, you can't build tilt wall. You could also have certain type of wood. I personally like teak wood, so if I put teak wood in front of a building, couldn't build that. If you had so much glass, have you ever seen the Apple construction built their retail stores where they have almost all glass? Couldn't build that either. So what happened is they're focusing on building something that doesn't exist there. This is not the Art Deco area of Miami Beach or Georgetown, Washington, D.C., where we're preserving current structures. And if other things are going to be built in there, you have to build within what exists at that time. We have such restrictions over here based on parking lots. There's only a few buildings over there, like the Coca-Cola building, that would meet the current building code. And I said, this is insanity. You're going to build nothing over there. Your focus should not be on what type of structures we're having here. Is your focus should be on bringing a primary tenant or building, or primary multiple ones, there first. Like if a Kohl's department store would be built there, that's primary. Then you're going to get secondary, like the Olive Garden or Old Navy. They'll be built around, and then you get a bunch of tertiary stores. I mean, downtown, almost all of our stores I would define as tertiary. They're not magnet stores that pull people in. Kohl's would pull people in and develop the traffic. But all of our restrictions we have here, it's 84 pages long, and you have to go through so many thresholds, architectural review, public hearings on design, this and this and this. It's impossible. I told them, this is insanity. I said, whoever is coming up with this idea must have formerly worked at the Kremlin or the Communist Party, because they have all these restrictions. This is insane. Nothing will be built over here. And after I made that presentation, there were people out in the hall that were verbally really nasty with me. They said I didn't know what I was talking about, blah, 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 blah. I said, well, just wait for 10 years, we'll see who's right. I hate to say the fact that I was right. There are a few things that were built over there, but I think we made a huge mistake. And it's not because the economy was poor, it's because it's over restrictions. I mean, people, when they look at this, if you make a presentation to somebody that wants to put something over there, they see 84 pages long, and they go through this, oh, forget it. We'll build over on East 2nd Street. And that's where they built. We had a building boom here, but it was not downtown. Now, I think we should change this and have it rezoned, get rid of all that form-based stuff completely. And because the economy is pretty poor, it's going to be a poor way to evaluate if this would do much better, because nothing's going to be really built in the city in the next few years because the economy is so poor. But we really need to evaluate. Go back and look on page 17 of this, all these different objectives we're supposed to have within 10 years. We failed. None of it was met. There's clearly a problem here. It wasn't the economy. It was clearly something wrong with the plan. And we need to get this established. All right, that didn't work. Let's go to plan B. Let's go back to what we had before. Let anything almost be built over there. Let's draw people into downtown. Focus on not building structural design things. You can't have this. You have to have a certain door here. You have to have the awnings a certain size. Insanity. That was total insanity. Let's focus on building a primary tenant in there. Like Kohl's already built here, but something else. And I don't mean the library, because that's just shoveling the deck. You're just moving the library from one part of downtown to another part of downtown. Let's focus on building a primary tenant, bringing secondaries in, and then the tertiaries will fall behind everything else, and not this insane building code that we had.
Questions or comments from Mr. Rowland?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you gone to any of the Generation Casper meetings?
I'm sorry, to the Generation Casper meetings?
Yes, sir.
No, I have not.
Why don't you go to some of those and put your ideas out there and let them be incorporated in the city's long-range plan?
Well, the problem with that is I'm not a big planner. I'm one of those people that I think plans, every time I think of plans, I think of the 9th grade when we were learning about the 5-year plans that the Soviet Union all the time. And I'd like to get rid of all the regulations, get rid of almost everything. And once you have plans, all to me that is putting a hand behind your back and tying it behind your back. I don't like plans. My attitude is just throw them in the garbage can. I know we're supposed to spend like $100-some thousand on different things with the plan. The women were here like 5 months ago, and they're talking about the plan. I'm against it. You can think of what you want to do, but once you have a written plan like we had here, this place was packed. You would think that there would have been a building boom over there with how many people were in favor of the Yellowstone development. And that was like, everybody was in favor of it, but same thing with your plan. We have this plan, and all it does is the plan is a hindrance to me for development. I'd rather just go over there, buy the property that was up for sale, give me $800,000, I'll put something over there. The same thing with now that they're selling where the library land is, too much money based upon it's next to the river, because you're going to have to build with piles to build anything in there, because you're going to have, you're going to end up with trouble with like the jail at Rollins where it's sinking. But I'm not in favor of any plans. I don't like plans. It's like a 5-year plan from the Communist Party.
Well, I will definitely agree with the tenor of your argument that regulations thwart business. And I will agree that regulations can often go too far. And they do. They strangle business. That's pretty well understood. I would also agree with you in spirit with the idea that there is a mentality that takes hold. It's the if you build it, they will come mentality. And everyone gets pretty wrapped up and pretty enthusiastic about projects and ideas and progress when they really haven't hammered out all the details and they don't know how much it's going to cost to maintain. And, it's when people get excited about plans and projects, they get kind of lost in a hearts and flowers universe, and often they don't come back. And there is something to be done, and we're really not quite sure. The OYD is an ongoing project, and yes, they haven't met their goals within a considerable time frame, and we could entertain discussions of other stuff. I know Woody Giles is back there, and he's thinking that we just should change the entire tax structure to actually promote development, So, there are ideas out there, and we're going to stumble upon more, but your cautionary tale about initial enthusiasm and form-based code, I get it. I do. And there are business owners in that area that really scratch their heads when it comes to complying with that code.
The thing is that to the current, there's only 2 council people that were involved in that. Mr. Hopkins, you were on the planning commission at the time. You were a council member, and you were Ms. Humphrey at the time. But I mean, you were at the council at the time, right, when that was finally approved. And so I don't know if the rest of you were even involved. I assume you probably just read in the paper, or even were possibly at the meeting. But it's a very long. It's 84 pages long. It's not like this is like a 2-page thing. When people, just the length of the document itself, when people look at this, if you're a business person, if you're going to come there and build something, you're like, oh my God, this is impossible. It's like an Encyclopedia Britannica, especially if you're coming from in Wyoming. If you're from New York, we're used to these documents that are like 500 pages long, and we're like, well, whatever. This is what just has to be happen. But if you're in Wyoming and you're coming from another area and you want to build even, let's say, a store there, oh, this is insane. And there's a whole list of stores that you can't build over there either. You can't have this, and this. I mean, and when they start reading this is like, well, this doesn't make sense. Like I said, we had a booming time period here, and almost nothing was built over there. So it wasn't the economy. I mean, at East 2nd Street, how much is built over there? And if you pull any of it over there, like the Kohl's that was built there, that whole thing, if we could lift the whole thing up and throw it into the Yellowstone district, we would say, hey, this was a great success. We could have had that, but we didn't.
Councilman Powell.
Thank you, Your Honor. You're right, Mr. Reynolds. None of us, and I'll be honest, I have not read through the form-based code. So I think your point is that we should maybe be more familiar with it. But we do have a citizen group that represents the old Yellowstone district, and I believe they're all property owners in the district. And so I wonder if we could ask them to give us an opinion as to whether they agree with your point that this is restricted development, or whether they believe that it's been a healthy tool, and I would be interested in hearing their opinion about that.
Do you happen to know if those people, if you're talking about the ones that own a business over there, or you're talking about also, like Serge owns a few properties over there, Serge Delios, and there's also the library foundation still, I believe, still has the land, and they're possibly selling that. So there's a lot of open land in there that maybe they're silent. I mean, those are the people that you really should be looking at, not so much the person that maybe has something on a corner that's already been developed, and they're like, oh, everything's fine, because they've had cosmetic surgery on their property, and everything looks fine, they have a bench out front. But what about the ones of the open space that nothing's being done? I mean, broker one is for sale, but it's outrageous price, versus what you're selling your thing for. That's a outrageous price what Randy Hall is trying to sell that property for over there, for where the library is. That's way overpriced versus what you sold on the other end, because you have access to Collins on your area, where that has on that side only has access to 2 roads. I mean, I say 1 road, not even 2. It's by the water, and they're asking 5 times as much.
I don't know the makeup of the committee. I assume everyone who owns property is eligible to volunteer to be a part of that, and they may have their own information or contacts with those folks. I don't know.
Yeah, the OYD committee meets once a month, and typically it's, I think, the 3rd Monday, and that's the people that live and work down there and own properties down there. And I'm not sure who else we should have in there. If Kohl's wants to come,
No, but Kohl's already built. I mean, they're done on the other side. They built like 9.
Maybe they didn't have 14 acres to build down there. You have to buy the property to build on it. So maybe they didn't want to buy 14 acres.
Oh, no. The Kohl's looked at 2 areas where the library was, by the water there.
It's still for sale.
No, but I'm saying, the Kohl's is not going to put another store here. They're doing terrible on the other side.
The brewery was going to move to Cheyenne, too.
Who?
You really believe that?
What? What was that again?
Never mind.
The Budweiser Brewery? Oh, no.
That was what people were saying.
Oh, yeah, that was a rumor. I heard that rumor years ago, yeah.
Okay. Any more questions or comments?
Would it be reasonable to have the committee?
If he's welcome to come.
Well, I mean, to consider, to kind of evaluate the impact.
Well, let me tell you what's going on in the committee right now. We are looking at changing the zoning on the Poplar Street corridor from OYD, or
Right.
form-based code, to C2. A number of the people that live there and a number of the people that are interested in building businesses there, they would like C2 zoning. And in fact, that kind of tips around what was going to happen at one point with the highway department. The highway department was going to build a much bigger road there. They were going to build an island down the middle of it and make it, a much bigger road. Well, it turns out the highway department says, not in our lifetime. It's not going to happen. So the group has actually met, and we will actually be looking at changing some of that back to C2 zoning.
Right, because I read that was actually up on the planning commission before, and it was like postponed or something.
It will go to the planning.
I mean, once that started, I think that might be a dynamic, or saying, all right, if you're looking at that point, is you might want to say, why don't we expand the C2 zoning, not only in the quarter area, but even further inland? I mean, we might, at that point, might even say, hey, listen, if we're looking at it anyhow for this area, why don't we look at it for the rest, or part of the other, I'm not saying the whole district area, but other parts as well. Because, I mean, we have not been successful over there like we wanted to. And
I don't agree with you. I think it's going pretty well.
But I mean, if you looked at the 10-year goal that we had, it's not even close to anything we had in 10 years.
I don't recall anybody saying it'll be done in 10 years.
No. But I'm just saying, I actually have it in here. I can read it to you. It's on page 17, but they're talking about the expectation for 10 years, and we're not even close to that. I mean, this is what they're talking about within 10 years. So if we look at it right at this, I think at this point, the council, it warrants the time, is when it gets close to 10 years, it's time to do a relook. We maybe want to continue it, maybe that's very fine. We need to do a relook at it. All right, fine, you may think it's great and everything's working fine, we're just going to continue it. But I think after 10 years, I think it warrants the fact, since it was basically a 10-year plan, let's do a relook at it, and maybe we don't want to continue it, or might want to make modifications.
Thank you.
Okay. It's a work in progress. Anyone else wish to address council? Please approach the lectern.
Amy Kidd.
Hello, Amy. Is it fair to anticipate that your issue is what you discussed at that previous meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Then I am going to avoid misstep and hopefully help you avoid misstep 2 by referring you to V.H. McDonald, City Manager, and he'll give you a line on the Chief of Police.
I have a letter a statement I would really like to read to you.
Does it contain any names?
No.
Does it
names?
any names of people involved in the incident?
No.
Okay. Does it make anything difficult for you to continue your case, which is under investigation?
No.
Okay. Then go ahead.
Amy Kidd, 455 Milton Avenue. Since my last very informal statement and plea regarding my case received little to no reaction, I've prepared a statement that I would like to read to you tonight. In 12 days, I will kiss my kids goodbye and check into a hospital at 5 in the morning. I'll be a nervous wreck. This will be my 4th C-section that I will be undergoing. My last C-section was extremely traumatic and life-threatening as doctors were unable to control my bleeding after the surgery. I'll receive an IV and a urinary catheter and then head into the operating room where I'll be given a spinal catheter and then cut open from hip to hip. Laying on my back underneath bright lights, I'll hear a baby start to cry. A baby I had no part in putting inside of my body. My story began after about a month of being very ill and incredibly exhausted. I sought medical treatment. March 3rd, 2016 is the day I learned that not only was I pregnant, I had been raped and a baby had been conceived because of that rape. I was raped January 30th. I did nothing wrong. I went out with 2 girlfriends and I came home to my own home. I crawled in my own bed with my sleeping toddler and I went to sleep. I did not dress provocatively. I did not drink to excess. I did not drink and drive. I did nothing wrong. However, a man saw an opportunity to put something into my drink and then proceeded to take something I was not willing to give, my body. I'm not sure if it would be worse to have the memory of the rape or to live day after day as I do, imagining what this man did to me while I laid like a dead person in my own home, in my own bed, with my sleeping toddler in my arms. I haven't decided if it is a blessing or a curse to not know what was done to me. I'm only left to imagine and assume what occurred that night, and every day is like a nightmare because of that. My last memory of the evening is not feeling well and incredibly tired and dizzy after about 4 or 5 beers in a 4 or 5 hour time frame. I woke up the next morning undressed from my waist down, soaking wet between my thighs, with an unimaginable headache and feeling like I had a debilitating hangover. Nothing made sense, and I had no idea how I got home, undressed, or why on earth I felt the way I did. I stayed in bed all day long. Since learning I was pregnant on March 3rd, after my rape that occurred on January 30th, I have given testimony to 6 unknown police officers. I have had to share my story with nurses, my doctor, my friends, my clients, my family, and even my precious innocent children. The best I could muster up or offer as an explanation to my kids was that Mommy is going to have a baby. You will have a new sister or brother. There was a bad man who put a baby in my tummy, but we were going to love this baby. Next came the questions from my kids. Who is a bad man? Will he try and hurt you? Will he hurt us? Will he try and take our baby away? Mommy, are you going to die because you're not supposed to have any more babies? Did the bad man go to jail? Why not? I ask you, what answers am I to give them? Since learning I was raped and pregnant March 3rd, I've been ill. I've spent hundreds on prescription meds to control my nausea and vomiting. I have vomited blood. I've missed days, weeks, and months of work because of being so severely ill. I am the only one who works in my home as a single mother with 5 children. I fell behind on every single bill. I had yard sales and I sold things online in order to put gas in the car and food on the table. When I finally could compose myself and control my vomiting enough to return to work, I was able to catch up on my bills, finally, this month, just in time for me to have a C-section and fall behind again. Since learning I was raped and pregnant on March 3rd, I've tried to prepare myself for this baby coming in 12 days. I've broken down and sobbed in the middle of stores when a little onesie that boasts Daddy's girl or Daddy's little princess is displayed on a rack. I'm overcome with disgust, anger, and sadness, and in the middle of a store or not, my emotions get the better of me. Since learning I was raped and pregnant March 3rd, I've laid in bed and cried. I've experienced all the symptoms of pregnancies, the joys, the aches, the pains, completely alone. First kicks, wiggles, hearing the heartbeat, I experienced alone. Needing meds or water or a back rub in the middle of the night, I've taken care of myself. If I needed a prescription, I've peeled myself up off the bathroom floor and gone to pick it up myself. I've missed countless baseball, football games, motocross races, gymnastic practices, and a myriad of extracurricular activities for my kids because I was just too sick to go. Since learning I was raped and pregnant on March 3rd, I've been to the doctor 16 times. I've had 4 vaginal exams. I've had 6 ultrasounds, 3 of which were vaginal. I've had 2 rounds of STT testing done. I've had 4 blood tests. I've had to wait and anticipate and agonize over the results of lab and STD tests. I've been given immunizations. I've had to endure uncomfortable procedures and treatments, and the worst is still yet to come. In 12 days, I will have to face the fear of the unknown and anxiety of how my body will respond to a high-risk C-section and the recovery from surgery and tubal ligation. If everything goes smoothly, once I'm home, there will be many nights of laying in bed with uncontrollable pain while I'm hardly able to move and get up out of bed and get myself to the bathroom, all while trying to take care of a newborn infant with no one to rely on but myself. Since learning I was raped and pregnant March 3rd, I've met with police 5 times. I've made countless phone calls. Most have been returned a week or more later. I've given detectives my phone, and I've given them the right to take whatever they may want or need off of it. I've had unknown police officers in my home to take and record my statement while photographing my home, my bedroom and my bed. I've offered to give a polygraph. I've asked and pleaded with them, what more can I do to help my case progress? I've given them access to all and any of my medical records. I've given them any scrap of information I think they may be able to use. I've called witnesses down to the police station myself when they were unable to coordinate with witnesses to obtain testimony themselves. I've had to supply them with information that they should have been able to obtain themselves. Since learning I was raped and pregnant March 3rd, I was asked more than 7 times if I wanted to give up my baby for adoption. I have learned that the socially acceptable norm, especially in an anti-abortion state like ours, is for women who conceive a child through rape to continue the pregnancy, but then proceed and give that child up for adoption. It is almost taboo for me to actually want to keep and parent this baby that was conceived through rape. So I've had to face scrutiny for that as well. I've learned that Wyoming and society in general is extremely pro-birth. Pro-life status is only awarded to those who aren't born to women who are raped or single mothers who struggle every single day. In cases such as mine, it is considered a tragedy rather than an act of love or nobility that I choose to keep my baby. I've had to try and laugh it off when someone asks, "Don't you know what causes that yet?" when they point at my belly. I've had to feel ashamed and humiliated when I walked around pregnant as an unmarried woman with a bastard child protruding from my belly. I've had to endure the embarrassment of telling my story. I've had tears and rage back as people ask about the baby's dad. I cannot even imagine the embarrassment or pain my children have felt or will when they are asked who or where the baby's dad is. Since I learned I was raped and pregnant March 3rd, I've rubbed my belly countless nights, telling my baby how much I love her. I've tried to tell her she is beautiful and innocent and is a precious blessing to me and her brothers and sisters. I've imagined what words I could possibly ever find or use to explain to her how she came to be. I've imagined what I may tell her one day when she asks where and who her dad is. Since I learned I was raped and pregnant on March 3rd, my rapist has enjoyed living a life filled with freedom and without the burden of illness or a debilitating pregnancy. He's been able to work and pay his bills. He's been able to enjoy his family and his life comfortably. He's been able to go around town and tell people that not only is he not a rapist, but goes further in bold-faced lies, telling them that we had a relationship, when in reality this man was never more than an acquaintance. He enjoys outing with friends. He's told people I'm a liar and has dragged my name through the mud. He has been arrested, sent to jail, and released for domestic battery of yet another woman. Since I learned I was raped or pregnant on March 3rd, I have seen him driving once, and I saw him walking on the street, and it took every ounce of self-control to contain the rage and not attempt to physically hurt him. Both times I became instantly nauseous and tearful and shaking with fear and anger. I drove straight home to go inside and lock my door and try to compose myself and not feel sad and infuriated or afraid. Since I learned I was raped and pregnant on March 3rd, I've been told by police that they were too busy. They were unable to contact or coordinate with witnesses or my rapist. I've gone a week or more without receiving return phone calls. I've been told my case is not a priority. I've been told my case is hard to prove and is merely a he said, she said, despite a baby growing inside of my belly that I had no part in putting there. I've been told they didn't want to contact my rapist since he had just endured a family tragedy, an FBI shooting, and may not want to cooperate with law enforcement as a result, so they needed to wait. I've been asked by police countless times whether or not I wanted to pursue child support when the time comes, which was not only a huge slap in the face, but a strong indication that they weren't willing to try and convict my rapist, but would rather I just go down the avenue of collecting money from him rather than getting my day in court and hopefully seeing some sort of form of justice served. When I tried to contact the chief of police, I was told I needed to talk to the supervisor first and follow the chain of command before I could speak directly to the chief. When I finally did speak to the chief outside of the chambers, when he approached me after the last council meeting, his way of following up with dealing with me was having victim services call me the next day. I've never heard from him again. Victim services is a joke. Leslie, who was in charge, did nothing more than speak to me rudely and condescendingly, adding further insult to injury, all the while taking the standardized approach of a defensive attitude and boasting what a wonderful job the police are doing. Ms. Humphrey, I heard that was also the approach you took at the last city council meeting when approached by a citizen with valid concerns similar to mine. You aren't alone, however. That was also the approach taken by the detective supervisor. I'm beginning to think there are guidelines that are collaboratively written about the answers to give and the defensive attitude to take when someone has the gall to point out any obvious flaws of any kind, that there may be room for improvement in our police department. It seems most are too busy patting each other on the backs for great jobs well done, rather than taking the time to address any concerns, complaints, or transparent problems. When I had the audacity to ask Victim Services what they could possibly do for me, the only answer I was giving was to apply for funding in case I wanted to pursue counseling or needed help with mental or physical health bills, and or to help with resources to get the ball rolling regarding child support. Now, more than just a little bit annoyed by this. One, I haven't felt the need or want for counseling. I don't want to sit around and rehash out what I've been through with yet another stranger. I have kids to take care of and bills to pay, and a very busy life to live. Counseling just takes more time away from that. I was never admitted to WBI, and although other victims who have reached out to me have been, after more than a year of waiting to hear if the Victims Assistance funding has come through for them, they've not received any word, and they're faced with more than $16,000 in mental health bills. So I felt a sigh of relief that I was never needed to go down that route. I don't want or need counseling. I wanted and I needed real tangible help when I couldn't get to work. Counseling isn't going to pay for diapers or utility bills. I want and I need some form of justice. I don't want child support from a rapist who belongs in jail, not free out on the streets, able to work. I want and I need some sense of urgency from the police department, rather than receiving condescending words and a defensive attitude because I'm frustrated. I'd like to feel some sort of empathy and initiative to do something about something that happened to me and my family that is terribly wrong. I don't need to be told by Leslie at Victim Services that if I'm having trouble reaching my detective assigned to my case by phone, that maybe I should be going down to the police station more often and waiting so I can meet with her in person. And I'll pause for a reaction to that because I was totally taken aback by that statement. Now, I'm doubtful that my rapist is going to want anything to do with this baby, and I thank God for that every single day. However, in Wyoming, rapists have rights to babies that they conceive through rape. So my worst nightmare is that one day he'll want rights. And if the police can't manage to question or arrest my rapist, and all the Victims Assistance can do is offer me counseling and resources to collect child support from him, one day he will be able to exercise his rights to my baby if he so chooses. And here is one more scary fact. I had to inform my detective and Victim Services both that my rapist has rights to my babies. They were both unaware of that fact. I'm sharing all of this with you because I'm frustrated. What has been done to me is wrong. What I've had to go through and experience and had to endure is wrong. I feel like I've been screaming at the top of my lungs that this isn't right, and all I receive from the people who can help me is a total lack of empathy and condescending and defensive attitudes, while they proceed to inform me what an awesome job they're all doing. The support I receive is from other victims who have reached out to me and who are equally frustrated with the lack of efficiency on behalf of the police department they received while working their cases and the general feeling of being further victimized. I won't be ignored or hushed. If I was your wife or your daughter or your sister or your niece, would what I'm experiencing matter to you then? Would you then be as outraged as I am? Where is my justice? I have barely seen anything that resembles an appropriate response, let alone a reaction to what has been done to me and what I have endured. Wyoming has a few major problems that receive attention, yet it seems to me that the root cause of them is being blatantly ignored. One is alcohol and substance abuse. The other is suicide. Now ponder that some of the victims who endure such traumatic violations are repeatedly told that their cases aren't a priority, and actually receive not only justice, but can witness their attacker being prosecuted and sentenced. And then further, receive appropriate mental health care, not just told to fill out an application, and a year later, while faced with mounting medical bills, still be waiting to hear if they've been approved for funding. Then, if the need further down the road arises for substance and alcohol abuse counseling, if these programs are in place, why aren't they being utilized appropriately? Why is the woman in charge of victim assistance one of the rudest and least empathetic people I have ever encountered? Why are rapists running around free and child abusers receiving nothing more than probation while victims are further victimized by the systems put in place to help them and then faced with mounting mental health bills? Maybe if these issues were addressed, we would begin to see a decrease in suicide and alcohol and substance abuse. Why is it so hard for the people who could make the appropriate changes to help these people who need help to connect the dots? You see, I'm not here only for myself. I am honored that people have reached out to me and trusted me, confided in me, and respected me for sharing my story. They see me speaking out and they can't or they won't because of fear or feeling further traumatized or utter humiliation, so they confide in me their trauma stories and frustrations and hope that maybe I can speak for them too. I've been walking around for the last 7 months with what feels like a giant humiliating scarlet letter on my chest, screaming out I was raped, and no one seems to care. So I'm asking, what are you going to do about it? When are you going to take a good, hard, and honest look at what is flawed in our justice system and make the necessary changes rather than turning a blind eye or continue to take the standard defensive approach as Ms. Humphrey demonstrated a couple weeks ago? Because if the day ever comes when my baby wants to know who this stranger is on my porch who wants rights to her, or my kids want to know why the man who raped me is still out in the community continuing to hurt other women rather than sitting in jail, I'll be back to you for more answers. That's all.
Amy, I said during the last meeting that it's a judicial system, it's not a justice system. And I share your outrage. And I understand that you're being re-victimized by this process. But there's just a way that these things have to work out. And I know it's frustrating.
You don't know.
I can see that it's frustrating. And your story is outrageous in many ways. And I pursued the question about staffing, and the police department has 10 detectives.
I've asked for 10 detectives. They have 3.
I don't understand the process that well either. But I do know that you are being re-victimized by just how long this is taking. And I can't give you any excuses because you've heard too many already.
It's not just me, though. There are so many of us.
And you've done everything right. And it's not fair that you are in your position. But this council can't do anything about that.
There's no options as far as looking at the budget or who's in charge of victim services or victims, whatever she wants to call it.
All of those options are pursued through V.H. McDonald. He's the one that does the staffing at the police. And, I've had him look into it, and he did.
And what were the results from him looking into it?
The results are that the police department too is concerned about staffing. They're kind of hanging on too. That these are tough times, and there are positions that we have not filled. And every time you see the city council spend $70,000, that's a person that we could pay for doing a job. And I hear you. It's outrageous.
Your Honor.
Yes.
I would like to point out, too, that the police department is not on a hiring freeze. Working in law enforcement myself, you got to understand it's very difficult to find well-qualified people to fill those positions. It's not the police department's fault that people don't want to apply for the job, quality people, and take on that job. So we're doing everything we can. There's no hiring freeze. There is funding available for police officers. It's a matter of recruitment of quality people. I don't want to comment on your case because it is an ongoing investigation, but I understand and share your frustration at the criminal justice system here in the country. I see it on my end as a law enforcement officer, way certain cases are treated versus others. But I can say that our circuit court judges are elected. Our county district attorney is also elected. So your battle on that front can be taken to the ballot box.
I want to be clear, this isn't an attack on the police department. This is a question about why they are given the resources that they need in order to, and why the standard answers of, I'm sorry, your case is not a priority, or.
Like I said, I can't speak to any of that because I don't have any insight. I don't have any knowledge of your case or what's going on or where they're at with it. I trust that they're doing everything they can. But when police departments across the nation are understaffed. This is a problem that law enforcement has been seeing for a lot of years. And it's not a question of funding. A lot of these places do have funding. It's a question of getting the right people to come in and work and to stay. Retention is also a very huge problem in law enforcement.
Thank you for your time.
Anyone else wish to address council, please approach the lectern.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Brown. I'm an attorney in town. My office is at 159 North Wolcott, Suite 355 in Casper. I also live at 1324 East M Street in Casper. I didn't come in here today thinking that I was going to speak to you. It wasn't my intention. But after hearing what Ms. Jacobson said, when I walked into this council meeting tonight, there was a property on the board, and the city was going to give it to the state for $700,000. Mr. Rowland had made a comment that it was worth about $2 million. One of the council members said, well, we're going from government to government, so hey, when the state is telling us that take it or leave it, my words, not yours, we want it for $700,000, and you're like, well, we're doing it government to government. So I'm not good at math, but I think that's $1.3 million. If you sold that property for what it was worth to the state, you have the property that the state wants. $1.3 million that you just gave away tonight. And if I heard what she had to say, the police department wants 10 detectives and they have 3. I'd have to think that with that $1.3 million, just on that one thing that I happened to listen to tonight, there would be sufficient funding to find a sexual assault person who is trained and empathetic, and ideally maybe 2, so they're not on call 24/7, who could be employed by the Casper Police Department to deal with these victims and these issues. You're saying, oh, look at what you just did tonight, $1.3 million. Do you know what a nonprofit agency could do with $1.3 million in terms of helping victims? The money is there. You're giving it away. And you need to think about what the priority is in our community. A little boy went to the fair and he got raped. A family just had a picnic this week or some reunion and their daughter was getting raped on their front lawn. You need to wake up. There is a lot of sexual assault that happens in this county. Now, I do family law. I do juvenile law. I happened to be in Cheyenne a month ago and I was talking to an attorney that does criminal law, and he said to me, I just had the worst case that I've ever dealt with in my life. And I've been here for 16 years dealing with horrible things that people do to each other and their children. And this is a person who's got more experience in years than me, and we've seen it all. And so I was kind of interested to, because we're sick people. I mean, we see a lot and we have to numb ourselves to a lot. The police, the emergency room doctors, we have to numb ourselves. So when something shocks an attorney, I'm curious. What shocked the attorney was the response of law enforcement. Because divorce attorneys, I'll tell you, we subpoena records, and we subpoena records from law enforcement agencies to find the dirt on our clients. This attorney had found numerous victims of sexual assault, young victims, too young to drive, and they had all reported it to law enforcement over the span of 10 years. I'm not saying it was the Casper Police Department. I'm not saying which law enforcement agency it was. I personally believe our police chief does an excellent job. When I've had issues with him, I have talked to him. He's taken them seriously. So I'm sorry that that Ms. Jacobson did not get the response that I know I have had. But that was the first encounter I've had. Then, just yesterday, I was talking to another attorney in a juvenile case. Again, different case, different facts. Again, a victim who is too young to drive. And the concern was response by law enforcement. These are unique cases. I would hope that if you're giving away $1.3 million on land sales, you would find a way in the budget to think of this as a priority, to really see what's happening to the victims in our community, and to find a way to look at this issue and to see if there isn't something that can't be done. To really find the money, charge the state more money. I deal with the state all the time on cases, and stand up to them and say, we want an extra $1 million because we're going to create this sexual assault team to deal with victims of sexual assault. You could do it. You can't. I don't want to, there's money there. Don't give it away. Don't give it away. Remember the victims who are being hurt, physically hurt. I know we all want to talk about business and we all want to talk about development. Who gives a crap how much business we have in a community if our victims are not safe and feel protected? It doesn't matter how many Kohl's we have. It doesn't matter how many businesses we have on the east side if I don't feel safe in my community. And I would hope that every member of the city council would remember feeling safe and protected, in my opinion, is worth a lot of money and is probably worth getting the value of the land. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Sweeney.
Pat Sweeney, 951 North Kimball. Really what I have to say is pretty inconsequential. Thank you for your courage to come up, Ms. Jacobson, and tell that. And my question, I don't know if you can answer this or not, in another matter, and it's on the land sale. I had been indicated by some state folk that we, the city, in particular, our former city manager had penned a letter which in essence gave in the negotiations are parking ability and cross-parking rights in the deal away at some point. And I just wanted to know if you can answer, perhaps you cannot answer it, but is that the case, that was basically not negotiated for because we had given those rights away?
The short answer to your question is no, that is not the case. In the letter that you're referring to, there was mention of shared parking structure. The only time that parking was mentioned was in association with a parking structure in which we would build half and they would build half. In the state's power of position, parking was wiped off altogether. And so the paragraph that references a parking structure and sharing the cost with the state, that was taken out. So the issue of parking is, as we have discussed, we tried to make it part of the negotiation for sale, and they wouldn't buy it.
Okay.
So that paragraph disappeared, and that was all the formal ideas of parking that ever formed, and they vanished.
The structure, as far as a structure or parking garage, my understanding was on the Goodstein properties, not on this piece of property that was sold.
It was basically a 50-50, go in and build a parking structure, and those are no longer entertained as a part of this sale.
Okay. It's not two separate issues?
No.
Okay. Because my understanding also was there was never talk of a parking structure on the land that you sold tonight as far as a parking garage.
Right.
Parking garage was only part of the other parcel, which was the Goodstein properties that you guys had basically in the agreement for the conference center downtown was where that came about on the purchase. So
that's where it had its inception.
Thank you, Your Honor. If you want to track this a little bit, Mr. Sweeney, essentially what happened is that the parking structure was proposed, and then the State Building Commission received overwhelming feedback that staff did not really want to be parking in a structure for safety reasons and preferred surface parking. So that was really kind of the chain of events that led us to where we are.
Okay.
And when I was talking with the state building commissioners, I said, well, we talked about parking, so why is it dismissed entirely? And I didn't get a satisfying answer to that question.
Okay. Thank you.
Mary DiVittorio, 222 West B. I should have spoken earlier, I apologize. On the matter of renaming West E Street, with the things that have come to light recently, I'm not sure the Parkway Plaza will even be an appropriate name for that street. Have you thought about that?
I have.
Yes, and
Yeah,
that explains his no vote
Done.
on that renaming.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it just seems maybe premature to do that.
Okay.
That's my comment.
In our memorandum of understanding with the Parkway, there are 3 different phases which we have to meet and they have to meet. And in the first phase, we rename the street. Now, the misconception swirling about this future convention center is that we're going to be throwing a bunch of money at the Parkway Plaza, and that's absolutely not true. Our agreement in that memorandum of understanding, after they reach their thresholds, we meet ours, they meet theirs, we will be doing some improvements to city streets. Spruce up that gateway that goes under the railroad, getting some, some nice infrastructure improvements that we need to do anyway. So that's all of the money that the city is entertaining in putting into that possible convention center. We're going to improve public property that we already own.
Right, and I don't object to any of that.
Right.
It's
But the renaming was part of that first phase.
okay, so you have to do that.
Yeah.
Well, that's too bad.
I know, and I would have protest voted too if I was worried it might not fly.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. Mary, before this item came to the agenda, I had a chance to have some conversations, and, personally, I think A Street, B Street, C Street, D Street, E Street, F Street, all should be renamed.
Right.
But the implication of renaming streets to the residents and the businesses which reside on them is, it's very costly. In this case, there's virtually no cost to the city, and the only business or occupant on that street is the Parkway Plaza. So this decision impacted nobody but the Parkway Plaza, and I think the name they chose was a nice name as compared to E Street.
That's true.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Right. Anyone else to address council, please approach the lectern.
Evening, Dale Zimmerly, 3035 Belly Drive. There's lots of talk about laws and law enforcement, and the laws of this nation were based on the Bible, on the Ten Commandments. But one thing many people forget is the first part of the Ten Commandments, where it talks about our Lord. And so I'm going to read the Ten Commandments. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You must have no other gods before me. Do not make an idol for yourself, nor form whatsoever of anything in the sky above, or the earth beneath, or in the waters under the earth. Do not bow down to them or worship them, because I, the Lord your God, am a passionate God. I punish children for their parents' sins, even to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me. But I am loyal and gracious to the 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. Do not use the Lord your God's name as if it were of no significance. The Lord won't forgive anyone who uses his name that way. Remember the Sabbath day and treat it as holy. 6 days you may work and do all your tasks, but the seventh day is the Sabbath to the Lord your God. Do not do any work on it. Not you, your sons or daughters, your male or female servants, your animals, or the immigrant who is living with you. Because the Lord made the heavens and the earth and the sea and everything that is them in 6 days, but resteth on the seventh day. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and mother, so that your life will be long on the fertile land that the Lord your God has given you. Do not kill. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not testify falsely against your neighbor. Do not desire your neighbor's house. Do not desire and try to take your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox, donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. And that is the Ten Commandments.
What translation was that?
That is CEB, Common English Bible.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address council? Welcome, Mr. Goodenough.
Mr. Mayor and Council, Keith Goodenough, 333 South Saconee. I just wanted to warn you that I saw on social media that the Harry Kirchners are coming down next meeting, and so there'll be a lot of tambourines and things, so I want you to be ready for that. Some comments made tonight kind of struck me as odd when you were talking about the new piece of property that was obtained from the railroad, and that there's possibilities the railroad's going to want the property back. Well, I think that's very odd considering there's going to be a state office building on it. So are we going to spend $40 million on a state office building, and then the railroad's going to come along and say they want their property back? Seems like when I was in the council that there is a difference in the varying segments of the railroad right-of-way, and that this particular segment was not subject to the recall provision, but I don't remember all those details. But I don't know if the state's going to want to spend $40 million.
I think Vice Mayor Kathy would like to address that.
Okay.
Basically, it isn't that they want the property back. They have an easement for it, which gives them right to access the property. They wouldn't own the property, but if there was another judgment as far as remediation, anything like that, they have access to it, and you cannot deny them.
It's permanent.
Just like if you go out on a city easement right now and plant trees, and we have to come through, or Rocky Mountain Power has to come through and replace cable, they can tear out your fence, they can tear out your plantings, and there is no remuneration back to you as the private property owner because you built on that easement.
Well, Mr. Mayor, let's hope the $45 million office building doesn't get in that situation.
Right, and the design I saw had a walkway built over that easement, just so they wouldn't have to knock down their building for a permanent easement.
Well, that's reassuring.
And as a matter of fact, Mr. Goodenough, that was why I made the comment about whether anybody else would really be interested in that property or not.
Yeah.
Because that is a concern of mine, is if I were a private businessman, I don't know if I'd want to buy it.
Well, Mr. Mayor, my second point is that there's somebody over here misspoke. Judges are not elected in Wyoming. They're appointed initially and then stand for retention every so many years. So it's
right.
A lot of states they are elected, but not here. They're selected. Of course, the DA is. With regard to the OID over-restrictive code, I think that those are good points. And there's, the example I've used is that your signs can only be 3 colors, so the Rainbow Cafe can't have a rainbow sign out front. I believe it's also true that orchards are not a permitted use in the old Yellowstone district. So it seems to me clear that there ought to be some amendments to that. With regard to the big issue tonight, I think, was the victims, and it seems to me the city council, if you all decided that this was going to be a #1 priority, that you can dictate that this is going to be a #1 priority. And I realize Manager McDonald handles the day-to-day details, but the council has the ability to say to him, this will be our highest priority in law enforcement, and we will find the resources to go that way. You recently appropriated $500,000 for a storage shed at the event center. You have to ask yourself whether or not that couldn't have been done differently and some of that money shifted. There's money within the budget because it is a big problem. Just in the past couple of weeks, the number of sexual assault cases, only the ones that have hit the paper, are substantial. And there is just intergenerational fallout from all that. And I think in terms of what Casper could be known for, if it's known for a top-notch sexual assault program, I think that would bring glory to all of you. I also believe that it's true that at the state level there is a 1-year backlog on testing rape kits, so that if a case is sent to the DCI crime lab, there's a 1-year backlog in general. There's there's intricacies, but in general, so that means that rapists who could be matched to a known person in the system are running around society for a year before a kit gets tested. And so that's a legislative issue, but it's kind of the same issue. The legislature could point more resources in that direction. 1 year is a long time. So that's my comments, and be ready for the tambourines in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address council? Please approach the lectern. Welcome.
I won't take very long of your time. My name is Tasha Blackburn. I just kind of want to second what Amy had mentioned about the victim services and the lack thereof as far as having an additional department for sexually assaulted victims. I mean, you do have those for the children, and you do have what makes the city money, I guess, would be more the drug stuff. But there is definitely a need for sexual victims that needs to be looked at. I understand money is not the issue, it's the lack of having people being hired for this job.
That is a really legitimate point, because detectives in the department are usually, they come up through, and it takes like a year just to vet, train, and get an officer on the street. Just your basic patrol officer. That's a year process, and a lot of people get weeded out in that process.
And I appreciate their efforts in doing so. However, my case alone has taken over a year to even get through victims' compensation, along with Leslie's demeanor towards victims. It needs to be looked at. You need to have people that have kind of dealt with this themselves, instead of just sticking somebody in there and saying this is your job, and for them to not have the right people skills, I guess, towards victims. So all that I'm saying, I guess, is I'm highly suggesting that you do look into having some sort of victims for sexual assaulted victims. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address council? Welcome, sir.
My name's Shannon Eli. I live at 2382 Sagewood Avenue. Mayor and City Council members, I was lucky enough to attend a toy run put on by A-Bait this weekend. And a good friend of mine kicked it off with a prayer to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. After the prayer, we learned we did have the permit, but we didn't have an officer to escort us through town. And in consequences to that, there was irate drivers, which I see their side of it. All these motorcycles go through town. They don't know that they're being a parade permit, which that caused several incidences with cars. Lucky enough, our group was skilled enough to get out of the way of the irate drivers. I understand that officers are limited, but it would be better to send an officer for a parade route than send 2 or 3 officers to the wrecks that were caused because of irate drivers not realizing what they were doing. And that's all I had to say, and thank you.
Police escort for parades. Got it. Anyone else wish to address council? Welcome, Mr. Giles.
Woody Giles, 290 East Magnolia, Casper. I actually live across the street from the city, so I'm kind of a interloper. But I have been going to the generational Casper meetings, you know, the last 2, and I'm going tomorrow. And they're entertaining, and free ice cream and pizza and whatnot. And so I kind of thought that the Casper, Iowa City was going to solve a lot of these problems about development and this, and I guess it's not working out quite as well as we had hoped. But I gave some input, and they seem to, and I see a couple council members there too, but they're there to get ideas from the citizens, and there's more people behind me that were at those meetings, just so you know how well it's going, you know. I give a couple suggestions, and that's all they are, is suggestions, that they seem to hit a brick wall, and I just don't quite understand that, because everything I've been suggesting is exactly the kind of thing that this generational Casper thing is trying to get happen, you know, and I've looked at the empirical data, and it makes sense to me, and I said, maybe somebody else would like to look at it just to confirm it or deny it, and it hasn't happened yet, so, but I keep trying. But anyway, I'm going tomorrow. If anybody, I expect to see somebody there.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Woody. Anyone else care to address council? Okay, well, let's go around the table. This way. Councilman Powell.
I did attend one of the Generation Casper meetings yesterday, and I too would like to see more people involved. I hope people will take advantage, of the last opportunity, not the last opportunity, the next opportunity, which will be at North Casper tomorrow at what time?
5.
5 o'clock.
5 to 7:30, I think.
5 to 7:30.
5:30?
In North Casper, I think it's.
Okay.
So
5:30, I know is when it starts.
You know, it's hard when people are living their lives and dealing with the day-to-day to think about being involved in a long-term planning process, but I encourage people to attend or participate when they have other opportunities, because I think the more input we have, the more likely it is we have come up with something that will have some value.
Councilman Hopkins.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Councilman Humphrey.
Thank you. Chief, do you know off the top of your head how many rapes we have per year? Okay. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. I know. It's a very sensitive subject, and
I think that there's always two sides to every story, and I don't think it's right for us to judge without knowing both sides. So I just want to caution us that this probably isn't the right forum for her to work through, and I wish her the best of luck. I'm the only woman on council. I feel like I need to fight for women, but this is probably not the right way to go. So what I could find on the internet showed rapes at an extremely low number. I don't know if that's true or not, and maybe we can look into that, but I just wish there was a better avenue for her.
I do, and in my comments, I as diplomatically and probably too diplomatically, I just tried to make that point that this really isn't the process. Councilman Pacheco.
I was gone last week for work, but I'm back, and so I'll be hitting some meetings, but I'll be able to more to report next week.
Thank you. Councilman Hiley.
I spent some time today trying to clarify that the city did not reduce the snow routes and the snow removal efforts in our last work session. I think the reporting of the work session just kind of came out a little wrong, and while we did consider proactively reducing snow removal routes to save money, the decision of the majority of the council was clear that we would continue to fund snow removal at the same rate that we have in the past, and we would trust the city to do a good job, the city staff. A highlight from today's meeting that was completely overlooked was the passage of some funding to remove logs and trees from the biathlon course clearing and bringing it down to a storage yard to be utilized, bringing those stumps down for river restoration. So the city doesn't have to buy these trees for the use in the restoration and the work that's being done up at the biathlon course to improve that land and make it functional for the biathletes is being enhanced by this small investment which will go towards the betterment of our asset of the North Platte River. So I think that's just something that needs to be said. And finally, on my vote this evening with regard to the sale of the property to the state, I realize I could have easily put in a protest vote and left it at no, but it would have been just that, a protest vote, and it wouldn't have carried the day. So I'll stand with my vote in favor of helping the state move forward with the office building. That's it.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson.
I just wanted to share my frustration with the way that criminal justice is sometimes handled in our country and in our state. I've been in my line of work for 10 years, and it's frustrating to see a first-time felon drug offender get a decade or two in federal prison, and somebody who has sexually assaulted a child get probation. It's frustrating. I get that. And in my opinion, Wyoming's one of the worst when it comes to taking care of, especially child sex offenders. But a lot of these changes, they start at the state level. I mean, it's really hard for us as a city council to really do anything. They start at the state level. They started making changes on the state level. With regards to our law enforcement, I think they do a fantastic job, and especially with some of the recent cases that our police department has had to take care of. I would hate to be that officer that responded first to some of those incidents. I'm sure there's some counseling in order for some of these officers. They do a fantastic job, but a police officer can only go so far to arresting somebody, filing the charges, and then it goes to the court system. And I think that's where the flaw is. I don't think the flaw is at the law enforcement level. I think the flaw is in the court system level and in the state laws that each individual state has. So that's all I wanted to say.
Vice Mayor Kathy.
Last evening, I missed the Generation Casper meeting. There was a CNFR meeting last night, and the new Event Center Director, Brad Murphy, was introduced to the CNFR committee, and that gentleman has a history of working with some of the rodeo personnel, so that looks like that is going to be a very good mesh from that standpoint. So the commissioner, Roger Walters, was very pleased with the new director there. So thought I would pass that on to everybody. Also then, the Generation Casper update. There is a meeting tomorrow afternoon. It's called an Opportunity Summit, and it's at Casper College in the McMurray Career Studies Center in Nicholas Auditorium from 11 to 1. And that is encouraged for business owners and their employees for a workshop focused on economic development. So for anybody that would be interested in attending that. Also then, the last of the series of 3, last night, this afternoon, and now tomorrow night, there will be another opportunities workshop for the general public to come. And as was stated by Councilman Powell, I think they had under 20 people Monday night. We had maybe a dozen today at the senior center, when the senior center was packed with people, but they weren't even interested to come in and join in. And that was disappointing from my standpoint, that there was that much apathy amongst the people. I would love to see a big crowd tomorrow night. And Councilman Powell was correct to a point. Doors open at 5. Meeting will start at 5:30. La Cucina is going to be providing some food there, and it is going to be at the Imitate the Image Church in North Casper. It's at 1124 North Elma. So please come, please put your input. I can't stress that enough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Kathy filled in for me today. I missed a Joint Powers Board meeting. We share responsibilities of the detention center with the county, so city, county, both sit on that board. And in my stead, Vice Mayor Kathy learned of certain infrastructural issues that will probably end up costing hundreds of thousands of dollars that the city and the county will have to split. So,
throw me under the bus.
Well, kill the messenger. Anyway, so the work of government is important. It's vital infrastructure. It's essential services. It's potentially another lawsuit from the ACLU if we don't get it right. So we need to take care of things, and the message that I heard loud and clear tonight is that we need to move victim services up in our priority. And I heard that, and we'll look into that. But no promises. This is difficult work. The next meetings of the City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, October 11th, 2016, in the Council's meeting room, and a regular Council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, October 18th, 2016, in the Council chambers. The Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss litigation and will only reconvene in order to adjourn this regular session.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Vice Mayor Kathy. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
This regular meeting is adjourned.